What's up, guys? Dualistique here, and I wanted to re-record step 3 of the design process in order to make it a shorter video than what I previously uploaded. For those that were insane enough to watch that 1 hour long video, God bless you. Even I didn't want to watch it, but I had to review it just to see what I was yapping about. Fortunately, a lot of the ideas and concepts I wanted to do or wanted to talk about were in the video, but it was mostly scattered in bits and pieces. So unless you actually watch the whole thing from start to finish, it was hard to see what step 3 actually was and what the outcome was supposed to be. And I get no one's gonna watch an hour long video. So the idea of this video is to basically go through all the steps in a timely manner, as well as I'm going to cut off the Figma talks and tutorials. I actually might think of making like some jank Figma masterclass presented by yours truly. It's not gonna be the most complete course. You can probably find a better course online, but I can probably guarantee you that everything in that course is everything that I've been using in the common projects that I get all the time. So you will be fine by watching that masterclass. So yeah, let's get started about step 3. And before I get to that, I actually wanted to point out that you might often reiterate steps 1 and 2 until you finally land on something concrete for what you're trying to achieve with your goal. As you can kind of see here, this was my step 2 that I presented in my last video. My step 2 video, I showed the process of what I did. I had all my references all together. Did some minor little sketches of what they all translated. So these were my visual guidelines that I would use to create wireframes from. Q 1 or 2 days later, I kind of had a self-reflection of myself, and I found other references. I saw other different sites, and I kind of did this process again. So I got a few more references and ideas from different sites. Alongside, of course, is creating these visual guidelines, visual cues. And I got a little more detail this time around, since I generally have an idea of what I'm trying to create with this portfolio site. But as you can see, this actually doesn't make sense to most people. But what I'm trying to do here is just design different sections of a website. This wouldn't normally be like a whole page. It's just, one section could look like this, another section could look like that, and so forth. So I got a little more defined here, and you just have fun with it. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. If you feel like you're in this cycle of like step 1, step 2, and then you find something cool and you go back to brainstorming and just keep on going in circles, that's going to happen, and probably most often will happen. However, you do need to find the discipline and also just the confidence that whatever you come up with in step 1 and step 2, it's going to be good enough to start progressing into the design process. Now, for step 3, we are going to be diving into Figma specifically, and we're going to be creating something called wireframes. And there's a lot of definitions for wireframes. A lot of people might think wireframes is just like an actual full website design with an idea of how it looks and where everything is. They wouldn't be wrong, But I wanted to paint a picture for you guys of how I treat wireframes. And for me, wireframes is mostly, at least the beginning stages of wireframes, is trying to mimic and lay out different structures and concepts to see how they look next to each other. And so, for example, over here, we have kind of like the basic logo with a tagline, my navigation, and a header image. And I'm basically just playing around to see what combinations of all three of these sound to me. Like what brings me joy, what use your inner Marie Kondo and see what looks good to you or what fits the purpose that you're trying to achieve. And there's so many combinations of how to do a certain thing, and that's why design is so fun, is because there's never a wrong way and a right way. There's just a way, and then there's just another way. There are bad design, but sometimes bad design can be used in a good way or can be intentionally used to drive a different result. But as I was saying, like, you can compare both of these. These are just logos and taglines, but because I presented it different, it looks different. It takes up a different, rectangular space. So structurally, this looks different. Now, if I were to compare this part here with this part here, I would say this second one looks better than the first one, just based off how it looks, because having these two elements kind of like the same size gives us some balance, versus on this side it's a little off balance. But maybe sometimes I would want something asymmetrical, and that's up to how you would want to design. Now for wireframing, you're kind of like doing this step when you're drawing out, but because we're just doing it in Figma, I wouldn't want you guys to think about any like exact details. Like, don't think about what size your logo is going to be or what size these fonts going to be. Generally, just guesstimate the size based on the elements that you're placing around with. So if this is the size of a button, then I want this navigation to be relatively similar size, which means I want the logo to be similar size. And you can see how this takes up an interesting piece of space on the website. And generally, for me, I was like, this probably doesn't look too great. Although I do like the idea of this navigation. And so that what wireframe does is, because you can try different things in wireframe very quickly, you don't want to spend too much time on this. You can start to see bits and pieces of the Lego blocks forming, and very often you'll be like, I like the navigation from here, but I like how I have my text here, and I like how my logo's on the right over there. And once you have a few of these wireframes all meshed up together, then you can kind of combine all these elements and see if they work. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you just hit it out of the ballpark and everything works together. And then sometimes you'll realize, okay, this type of navigation, centered navigation, only works well if you had certain other elements. And that's a really great learning tool that you can reference for future design just to make this process faster. So I'm gonna go over kind of like each my wireframes and explain like the concept I'm trying to get to, or some of the things I'm trying to visualize and see if I like it or not. I think that'll be a good use of the time. We're at 11 minutes, so I'll probably try to do this really quick. So you can you see here, I'm just working on navigation. Like, do I want something elaborate that has all these different submenus? You know, I kind of like this navigation, which I took reference from over here. And then I even flip-flopped the logo and navigation, see how it looks. But overall, I'm not liking it. So it's great to sometimes do an idea just so you can dismiss it as an idea and call it a dud. Here, kind of simple. I don't know why I had that over there. I think here I was like, okay, I'm actually starting to like this navigation. So you'll see this repeat somewhere else. Here I was thinking, okay, what if my image was full background? This actually doesn't look too bad. And it might be a contender in whether it might be a different page, or it doesn't have to be the home page. It could be an about page, case study, a blog post. So keep in mind when you're doing these quick wireframes that you're not just doing it for the main homepage or for any specific page. You're just playing around with all the different ideas of what you like in a website. And so you can implement it in other ways, in different pages of your site. Like, you're not bound to have every page to look the same. It just makes development easier. But if you want to take it an extra notch and have each page look a little bit different to match what you're going for, I think that's perfectly fine. So here's some other ideas I was playing around for site nav. I kind of like this in some way, mainly because I was thinking of having like a VTuber insert here of a video or something like that, and it would just pop up to explain a case study. I thought that might have been fun. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not, but that was that's been an idea I had for the longest time to upgrade my portfolio. But VTubers are so expensive to commission. And then you can see I'm just playing around like with different ways of formatting. And this is a perfect example of how like you don't have to be exact in how you're mocking these up or wireframing them. These gray rectangles are just representatives of text. I just didn't want to use lorem ipsum or whatever text generators, but I can still see what it looks like to have text here with this type of format. And then here you can see I'm starting to bring in bigger typography to take up space and see how that plays with other things I want, images. You can see here now I'm playing with a bottom navigation, which I thought was a cool idea I've seen some sites use. Like, I kind of like this layout for maybe possibly a blog. I wouldn't use it for a main page per se, but this could be a blog title, blog image, blah blah blah, and maybe on the sidebar would be like, this would be the author, which is always going to be me, and then maybe additional blog posts on the side. Some different ideas. So you should be making these pretty quickly, because as you can see, they're all just variation forms of the same thing, just moving things left and right. As you can see here, I just have representative of what navigation can be, or what an icon is. So yeah, throughout this whole step, just play around, do what you want. Here's another version of navigation. I think I'm liking this a lot as well. Trying out how to lay out certain images to call out certain text. And then ultimately on top here is what I'm kind of leaning towards, of using as a base for either the homepage or certain other pages. So this was my idea of a bento grid, and I'm using these as like little portals that people can enter through to get through different sections of site. And then this bottom part is kind of like the reverse sticky header footer thing, so that everyone will know what my brand is, what I do, and if I'm available to chat. And then up top can be just kind of like some type of side navigation, just in case people don't get a certain experience. In my case, I think it's always reasonable to have 2 ways to do something, just in case people fail the first time around, you have a second backup. And then I worked with some kind of I don't want to say brutalist, but very minimal type of layouts here, and I thought this was nice. It's crazy simple, but this might be something I will go for. Similar to this, like this looks stupidly dumb, but in some aspect I like it. And then more bento grids I'm practicing on, just to see what that looks like. Idea of cards. So you can see I'm starting to like this navigation, like this type of navigation. It looks pretty cool, and this footer looks nice. Then over here, let's bring out different ways of how to use typography as some type of decorative tool. And so I started really liking this like setup of a title, what my project is, and using katakana as some type of decoration. But it's also informative in terms that, this is just a translation of that. And then, as I mentioned before, like, don't be afraid to start using your references and actually inserting how that looks into web form. So you can kind of see here, this whole thing is very familiar to this. And it's crazy how print can transfer good ideas to web, because essentially that's what it is. Print, web is just print, just digital print. So yeah, that's going to be for step 3. As I said, the main parts you want to do is to quickly design screens with concepts just to see whether they work, how they line up with other things. Do start putting in some images. They can just be whatever images you have or mock-up of other things. If not, gray boxes is perfectly fine. Play around with some typography, especially if you aren't sure of what fonts you're going to use. I would use this step to use that here. Luckily for me, I have a licensed font that I researched into, and I kind of like use it as my brand font. So I'm kind of stuck using these specific fonts just because I like the messaging behind it and how they created it. So that saves me a lot of headache from just trying to figure out other fonts to use. I think I'm missing something. Don't play too much around with colors yet. I've done it here once or twice just because I want to see how red is working, but I would probably still keep your wireframes to black and white. But if for some reason you need to use color to see how a button might look, then feel free to do that. But that will be mainly for part 2 of step 3, where we actually will be more designed and thoughtful of what we're doing. So we'll definitely think about font sizes, how many pixels something is from another element, color, sizes of images, what type of images we're going to use, and we're going to be on our way of building our website. So hopefully this is enough for you guys to get started, to do some wireframes on your own, or you can definitely see how I do my process. And then in the next episode, we'll jump into me creating an actual, basically a template or website design. Catch you later.